My sister seduced my millionaire husband at our anniversary party. She's boring, she told him loudly. I'm more fun. He left with her that night. At the divorce hearing, they walked in smugly until my lawyer opened the briefcase. Their confidence shattered when they saw what I'd been hiding about his money. I never thought my own sister would destroy my marriage at my anniversary party. But here I am, about to tell you exactly how karma served the most satisfying revenge I could have ever imagined. Hey everyone, I'm Sarah, and I'm 34 years old. Before we dive into this story, I want you to drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from, and if you've ever dealt with family betrayal or a cheating spouse, hit that like button because today's story is going to show you that sometimes the best revenge is just letting people destroy themselves. Don't forget to subscribe if you believe that truth always comes out in the end, because trust me, it absolutely does. Let me start by painting you a picture of my family dynamics, because understanding this is crucial to why what happened was so devastating. I'm the older sister by 3 years, and from the moment my sister Emma was born, she became the golden child. Emma was the one with the perfect blonde hair, the bubbly personality, the one who could charm anyone within 5 minutes of meeting them. Me. I was the responsible one, the one who got good grades, went to college, worked hard, and never caused any drama. Growing up, Emma never had to work for anything. When she wanted designer clothes, our parents bought them. When she crashed her car in high school, they immediately got her a new one. When she dropped out of college to find herself, they supported her financially for 2 years while she traveled Europe. Meanwhile, I was working part-time jobs through college, paying my own way, and being told I was lucky to be so independent. The pattern continued into adulthood. Emma would float from job to job, relationship to relationship, always landing on her feet because someone was always there to catch her. She had this way of making people want to take care of her. She'd bat her eyelashes, play the victim, and suddenly everyone would be rushing to help poor little Emma. I met my husband David when I was 28. He was successful, running his own tech consulting firm, and while yes, he had money, that's not what attracted me to him. David was kind, thoughtful, and treated me like I mattered. After years of being overlooked in my own family, having someone who actually listened to me, who valued my opinions, who made me feel seen, that was everything. We dated for 2 years before he proposed, and I was genuinely happy. For once in my life, I had something that was mine. David loved me for who I was, not because I was the responsible one or the reliable one, but because he genuinely enjoyed my company. Emma, of course, had opinions about my relationship from day one. He's so serious, she'd say. You two are like an old married couple already. Where's the fun? Where's the passion? She'd make these comments at family gatherings, always with a laugh, always disguised as sisterly concern. But I could see something else in her eyes, envy, maybe, or calculation. When David and I got married, Emma was my maid of honor. She gave a speech about how Sarah finally found someone who appreciates how practical she is, which got laughs but felt like a backhanded compliment. Still, I brushed it off. This was my day, and I wasn't going to let Emma's need to be the center of attention ruin it. The first few years of marriage were wonderful. David's business continued to grow, and we bought a beautiful house in an upscale neighborhood. I kept working, I loved my job in marketing, but financially we were very comfortable. David was generous with our families, always picking up dinner tabs, giving thoughtful gifts, helping out when needed. My parents loved him, constantly praising me for landing such a good one. Emma, meanwhile, was struggling. She'd moved back in with our parents after her latest relationship ended, and she was working at a boutique, barely making ends meet. During family dinners, I'd catch her staring at my jewelry, my handbag, the photos David and I would share from our vacations. The envy was becoming more obvious, but I still didn't see what was coming. The incident that changed everything happened at our 5th wedding anniversary party. David had insisted on throwing a big celebration. He'd rented out a beautiful venue, hired caterers, invited all our friends and family. I was touched by the effort he'd put in, and I felt so loved surrounded by everyone important to us. Emma had been drinking heavily throughout the evening. She'd worn a dress that was frankly inappropriate for the occasion, bright red, very low cut, very short. She kept positioning herself near David, touching his arm when she talked to him, laughing too loudly at his jokes. I noticed, but I didn't want to make a scene at my own party. Then came the moment that shattered everything. I was in the bathroom when I heard voices in the hallway. Emma's voice, unmistakably slurred with alcohol, and David's, trying to sound diplomatic. I cracked the door to listen. "Come on, David," Emma was saying. "You know you're bored. Sarah's so predictable, so serious all the time. When's the last time she surprised you? When's the last time she made you feel alive?" My heart stopped. I pressed closer to the door. David's voice was uncomfortable. "Emma, you're drunk. We should get you some water." "I'm not drunk," she laughed, and I could picture her stepping closer to him. "I'm honest. Look at me, David. Really look at me. I'm everything Sarah isn't. I'm fun. I'm spontaneous. I'm exciting. She's boring, and you know it." There was silence, and in that silence, my world started crumbling. "Emma," David's voice was different now, quieter. "She doesn't appreciate what she has," Emma continued, and her voice was getting bolder. "She takes you for granted. She's so focused on her career, her routines, her perfect little life. But what about passion? What about feeling alive? I could show you what that feels like." I should have burst out of that bathroom. I should have confronted them both right there. Instead, I stood frozen, listening to my sister actively seduce my husband at my own anniversary party. "You're right," David said finally, and those two words destroyed me. "She is predictable." I heard movement, what sounded like footsteps getting closer together, and I couldn't take any more. I slipped back into the bathroom, locked the door, and tried not to vomit. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn on the faucet. When I finally composed myself enough to leave the bathroom, I found them on the venue's balcony. Emma was pressed against David, her hands on his chest, looking up at him with that practiced, innocent expression she'd perfected over the years. David was looking down at her, and the expression on his face, I'd never seen him look at me that way. I watched my husband fall for my sister's manipulation in real time. The party continued around me, but I felt like I was watching it through glass. I smiled, I thanked people for coming, I played the part of the happy anniversary wife while inside I was dying. Emma and David were more careful after that, but I caught the looks, the brief touches, the way they found excuses to be near each other. At the end of the evening, as we were saying goodbye to the last guests, Emma came up to me with that familiar fake sweet smile. "Thank you for including me in your special day, Sarah," she said, hugging me. "I had such a wonderful time getting to know David better." The way she emphasized, "getting to know David better," made my skin crawl. That night, David was distant. He claimed he was tired from the party, but he barely looked at me. He went to sleep without our usual conversation about the evening, without telling me he loved me. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from the party, wondering if I was losing my mind or if my world was actually falling apart. The next few weeks were torture. David started working late more often. He'd get text messages that he'd quickly hide. He became secretive about his phone, something he'd never been before. When I tried to bring up the party, asking if he'd had a good time, if he'd enjoyed talking to my family, he'd give vague answers and change the subject. Emma, meanwhile, was suddenly everywhere. She'd drop by our house unannounced, always when David was home. She'd call him directly about family stuff instead of going through me. She started showing up at places she knew we'd be, the gym David went to, the restaurant where he liked to grab lunch, even the coffee shop near his office. I felt like I was going crazy. When I tried to talk to my parents about Emma's behavior, they brushed off my concerns. "Emma's just being friendly," my mother said. "She's trying to bond with David as her brother-in-law. You should be happy they get along." "You're being paranoid," my father added. "Emma would never do anything to hurt you." But I knew what I'd heard. I knew what I'd seen. And I knew Emma better than anyone. When she wanted something, she didn't stop until she got it. 3 months after our anniversary party, David asked for a divorce. He sat me down in our living room on a Tuesday evening and delivered the news like he was firing an employee. Clinical, detached, like our 5 years of marriage meant nothing. "I'm not happy, Sarah," he said, not even looking at me. "I haven't been happy for a while. We've grown apart. We want different things." I knew this was about Emma, but I had to ask, is there someone else? He had the audacity to look offended. "This isn't about another person. This is about us not being compatible anymore." The lies came so easily to him. I almost respected the performance. "I want to handle this amicably," he continued. "We'll split everything fairly. You can keep the house if you want, or we can sell it and split the proceeds. I need to be free to figure out what I really want." What he really wanted was my sister, but he was too much of a coward to admit it. I didn't fight him that night. I didn't scream or cry or beg. I just nodded and said I needed time to process everything. David seemed relieved by my calm reaction. He probably thought this was going to be easier than he'd expected. He moved out the next week, taking only his clothes and personal items. He left everything else, the furniture we'd picked out together, the wedding gifts, the photos from our travels. It was like he couldn't wait to erase our entire relationship. 2 weeks after David moved out, Emma called me. "Sarah, I heard about the divorce," she said, and I could hear the fake sympathy in her voice. "I'm so sorry. Are you okay?" "I'm managing," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "If you need anything at all, I'm here for you," she continued. "I know this must be so hard, but maybe this is for the best. Maybe you two just weren't right for each other." The audacity was breathtaking. She was consoling me for the breakup she had orchestrated. "Maybe," I said simply. "I actually wanted to ask you something," Emma said, and here it came. "David reached out to me. He said he's been really struggling with the divorce, and he asked if I wanted to grab coffee sometime. Just as friends, to talk through everything. Would that be okay with you?" This was my sister asking permission to date my husband, the husband she had stolen from me. "Do whatever you want, Emma," I said. "It's not my business anymore." She actually had the nerve to sound relieved. "Oh good, I was worried it might be weird. But you're right, you're not together anymore, so there's no reason we can't be friends." Friends, right. I hung up that call and finally allowed myself to cry. Not just for my marriage, but for the sister I thought I had. The sister who would console me while actively destroying my life. David and Emma didn't even try to hide their relationship. Within a month of our separation, they were seen together all over town. At restaurants, at movies, at the gym. Emma would post photos on social media never showing David directly, but always shots that made it clear she was with someone. A second glass of wine at dinner. 2 coffee cups on a table. Her hand being held by someone just out of frame. My parents, when they found out, were concerned. "This is a difficult situation," my mother said during one of our increasingly awkward phone calls. "Emma says they just connected over helping each other through hard times." "Emma's always been impulsive," my father added, "but David is a good man if they're happy." They were actually taking Emma's side. My own parents were justifying my sister's betrayal because they'd rather keep everyone happy than acknowledge what she'd done. The divorce proceedings began, and David's attitude shifted completely. The man who had promised to handle everything amicably suddenly had lawyers demanding I give up claims to his business, his investments, even the house we'd bought together. He wanted to keep everything and leave me with almost nothing. His lawyer painted me as a gold digger who had been living off David's success. They claimed I had contributed nothing to the marriage, that I had been a financial burden, that I didn't deserve any significant assets from the divorce. It was humiliating and infuriating. This was the man I'd supported through the early days of his business, who I'd encouraged when he doubted himself, who I'd stood by when his first major client almost bankrupted him. But now that he was successful, apparently I had been dead weight the entire time. Emma, meanwhile, was playing the role of supportive new girlfriend perfectly. She'd accompany David to legal meetings, holding his hand, whispering encouragement in his ear. When they'd see me in the lawyer's office or courthouse, she'd give me these pitying looks, like she felt so sorry for poor, pathetic Sarah who couldn't keep her man happy. The worst part was how she'd positioned herself as the victim in all of this. To hear Emma tell it, she and David had fallen in love despite trying to resist their feelings. They had fought against their connection out of loyalty to me, but love had conquered all. She was brave for following her heart, and I was bitter for not accepting their beautiful romance. This narrative actually worked on some people. Mutual friends started taking sides, and not all of them chose mine. Some actually believed that Emma and David were star-crossed lovers who had found each other despite impossible circumstances. I was isolated, humiliated, and about to be financially ruined by the man I'd loved and the sister I'd trusted. David's lawyers were confident they could minimize my settlement. Emma was living her fairy tale romance, and I was the bitter ex-wife who needed to accept reality and move on. That's when I decided it was time to play my hand. See, there were things about David's finances that nobody knew. Things I had discovered accidentally and kept to myself, thinking they would never matter. Things that David had forgotten I knew about. During the early years of our marriage, when David was building his business, I had helped him with administrative tasks. I'd organized his files, managed his correspondence, even sat in on some client meetings when he needed support. I had access to his business accounts, his financial records, everything. Most wives in my situation would have seen the revenue reports, the tax filings, the legitimate business transactions. But I had also seen the other things. The offshore accounts, the shell companies, the creative accounting that allowed David to hide significant portions of his income from the IRS. David had been committing tax fraud for years. He'd set up a complex network of fake business entities that allowed him to funnel money offshore, claiming business expenses that didn't exist, and underreporting his actual income by millions of dollars. He'd gotten greedy as his business grew, and sloppy with his record-keeping. I had kept copies of everything, not because I was planning to use them, but because I was naturally organized and wanted to understand our financial situation. I had files full of bank statements, transaction records, correspondence with offshore banks, and documents that clearly showed the scope of David's tax evasion. For years, this information had sat in a folder in my home office, forgotten. David had eventually hired professional accountants and lawyers to handle his finances, and I'd stepped back from the business side of things. But I'd never thrown away those old records. When David's lawyers started portraying me as someone who had contributed nothing to his success, who deserved nothing from our divorce, I realized it was time to remind everyone exactly what I did know about his business practices. I consulted with my own lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen who specialized in high-asset divorces. When I showed her what I had, her eyes lit up. "Sarah," she said, "this changes everything. Your husband has been systematically defrauding the government for years. The penalties alone would be devastating, not to mention potential criminal charges." "What does this mean for the divorce?" I asked. "It means you have significant leverage," Patricia smiled. "He can either negotiate a fair settlement with you or explain to the IRS why he's been hiding millions of dollars in income." But I wasn't ready to show my hand yet. I wanted to wait for the perfect moment when David and Emma were at their most confident, their most smug. I wanted them to think they had won completely before I pulled the rug out from under them. That moment came at our final divorce hearing. David and Emma walked into the courthouse like they were attending a celebration. Emma was wearing a designer dress, probably bought with money David should have been paying in taxes, and carrying a handbag that cost more than most people make in a month. David was in an expensive suit, looking confident and successful, ready to officially end our marriage and start his new life. They sat together in the front row, Emma's hand on David's arm, both of them barely containing their excitement. David's lawyers had prepared what they thought was a slam-dunk case. They were going to paint me as a greedy ex-wife trying to take advantage of David's hard work, and they expected the judge to award me minimal assets. Emma actually had the audacity to smile at me when I walked in. Not a friendly smile, but a victorious one. The smile of someone who had taken everything she wanted and gotten away with it. As the hearing began, David's legal team presented their case exactly as expected. They portrayed David as a self-made success story and me as someone who had contributed nothing meaningful to our marriage or his business. They argued that I deserved only the bare minimum required by law. When it was our turn, Patricia stood up with a briefcase I'd never seen before. "Your Honor," she said calmly, "before we discuss asset division, there are some financial irregularities we need to address." David's lawyer looked confused. "Your Honor, we've provided all required financial documentation." "That's interesting," Patricia replied, opening her briefcase, "because the documentation you've provided appears to be incomplete." She began pulling out folders, documents, bank statements. David's face went from confident to confused to worried in a matter of seconds. "What we have here," Patricia continued, "is evidence of a systematic tax evasion scheme spanning the last 7 years. Hidden offshore accounts, fake business entities, fraudulent expense claims, and significantly underreported income." The silence in that courtroom was deafening. David's lawyer was frantically whispering to him, but David wasn't responding. He was staring at the documents Patricia was displaying, his face going pale as he recognized his own records. Emma's confident smile had completely disappeared. She was looking back and forth between David and the papers, clearly not understanding what was happening, but knowing it wasn't good. "Your Honor," Patricia continued, "Mr. Thompson has been hiding millions of dollars in assets from both his wife and the federal government. The income he's claimed in these divorce proceedings represents less than half of his actual earnings." The judge was studying the documents Patricia had provided. David's lawyer was asking for a recess, but the judge waved him off. "These are very serious allegations," the judge said. "Mr. Thompson, do you have an explanation for these discrepancies?" David tried to speak, but no words came out. He looked like he was going to be sick. Emma was gripping his arm now, her face a mask of panic as she realized what this meant for her fairy tale romance. "Furthermore," Patricia said, delivering the final blow, "we'll be providing copies of all this evidence to the Internal Revenue Service and the FBI's Financial Crimes Division immediately following these proceedings." That's when David finally found his voice. "Wait," he said, standing up. "Wait, we can work something out." But it was too late. The judge had seen enough. "This hearing is adjourned pending a full investigation of these financial irregularities," she announced. "All marital assets are frozen until this matter is resolved." As we filed out of the courtroom, I caught a glimpse of David and Emma. The confident couple who had walked in that morning were gone. David looked like he aged 10 years in the span of an hour, and Emma looked terrified. She finally understood that the money she thought she was going to enjoy, the lifestyle she thought she was going to live, the successful man she thought she had stolen, it was all built on lies that were about to come crashing down. Outside the courthouse, David tried to approach me. "Sarah, please," he said, his voice desperate. "We can figure this out. We don't need to involve the government." I looked at him calmly. "You should have thought about that before you decided. I contributed nothing to your success." Emma was standing behind him, tears streaming down her face, finally understanding the full consequences of her choices. "Please," she whispered, "I never meant for any of this to happen." "Yes, you did," I replied. "You meant for all of it to happen. You just didn't expect there to be consequences." The aftermath was swift and brutal. The IRS launched a full investigation into David's finances. Within weeks, his accounts were frozen, his business was under federal scrutiny, and he was facing charges for tax evasion and financial fraud. The penalties and back taxes he owed were more than he could possibly pay, even with all his hidden assets. Emma's fairy tale romance crumbled overnight. The wealthy boyfriend she thought she had won turned out to be a criminal facing potential prison time and financial ruin. The lifestyle she'd been enjoying, the expensive dinners and shopping trips, all came to an abrupt end when David's assets were seized by the government. But the real satisfaction came from watching Emma try to navigate the social fallout. Our parents, who had been so understanding about Emma following her heart, were horrified when they learned the truth about David's criminal activities. The man they had praised me for landing was now facing federal charges, and their golden child had destroyed her sister's marriage for a relationship with a tax cheat. "We had no idea," my mother said when she called to apologize. "Emma said David was just misunderstood, that you were being vindictive about the divorce." "I know," I replied. "Emma's always been good at making people believe what she wants them to believe." My father was more direct. "We failed you, Sarah. We should have seen what Emma was doing. We should have supported you." It was gratifying to finally hear them acknowledge Emma's behavior, but it was too little, too late. Emma herself tried to reach out multiple times. She called, texted, even showed up at my house crying and begging for forgiveness. "I made a terrible mistake," she sobbed on my doorstep. "I was jealous and stupid, and I ruined everything. David's not who I thought he was. I need my sister back." But I was done being Emma's safety net. "You made your choice," I told her. "You chose to destroy my marriage for a man you barely knew. You chose to betray me in the worst possible way. Now you get to live with those choices." "But I'm your sister," she cried. "No," I said calmly. "A sister doesn't do what you did. You're just someone I used to know who happens to share my DNA." I closed the door and never looked back. As for David, his legal troubles were just beginning. The federal investigation uncovered even more financial crimes than I had initially discovered. He ended up pleading guilty to multiple counts of tax evasion and fraud, receiving a 5-year prison sentence and owing millions in penalties and back taxes. His business collapsed, his assets were liquidated to pay his debts, and he lost everything he had spent years building through illegal means. Emma tried to stand by him at first, playing the role of the loyal girlfriend supporting her man through hard times. But when it became clear that David was going to prison and would emerge with nothing, her loyalty evaporated. She broke up with him in a letter, not even having the courage to do it in person. The last I heard, Emma had moved to another city, trying to start over where people didn't know her story. David was serving his sentence in federal prison, probably wondering how his perfect plan to trade up from his boring wife had gone so spectacularly wrong. Meanwhile, my life was completely transformed. The divorce settlement, once David's true assets were uncovered, was substantial. I received half of everything he had actually earned during our marriage, not just what he had admitted to. It was more money than I had ever imagined having. But more importantly, I had my freedom and my self-respect. I left my job and started my own marketing consultancy, using the settlement money to build something that was entirely mine. Without the stress of my toxic marriage and family dynamics, I threw myself into work I was passionate about, and my business thrived. I also started therapy, working through years of being the overlooked, responsible one who always put everyone else's needs first. I learned to set boundaries, to value myself, to recognize manipulation when I saw it. The most unexpected part of my healing journey was discovering what real friendship looked like. My colleague Jessica, who had watched me go through the divorce, became one of my closest friends. She introduced me to her circle women who were smart, successful, supportive, and genuine. For the first time in my life, I experienced what it felt like to be around people who celebrated my successes instead of being threatened by them. There was Lisa, a lawyer who had built her own practice from nothing. Maria, a doctor who had overcome incredible obstacles to get through medical school. Jennifer, an entrepreneur who had started 3 successful businesses. These women were accomplished, confident, and kind everything I had thought didn't exist in female friendships. With them, I didn't have to be the responsible one, or the reliable one, or the boring one. I could just be Sarah, and that was enough. We started a tradition of monthly dinners where we'd celebrate each other's wins, support each other through challenges, and just enjoy each other's company. These women became my chosen family, the sisters I had always wanted but never had. About 1.5 years after my divorce was finalized, I met Robert. Robert was nothing like David. Where David had been flashy and status-conscious, Robert was quietly confident. Where David had been charming but ultimately selfish, Robert was genuinely kind and thoughtful. Where David had seen me as an accessory to his success, Robert saw me as a partner and an equal. Robert was a professor at the local university, teaching environmental science. He was passionate about his work, deeply intelligent, and had zero interest in impressing people with material possessions. When we met at a coffee shop near campus, he was reading a book about sustainable agriculture and wearing a sweater that had clearly seen better days. Our first conversation lasted 4 hours. We talked about everything: work, books, travel, family, dreams, fears. Robert listened to me, really listened, and responded with thoughtful questions and insights. He made me laugh, but he also made me think. When I told him about my divorce, he was sympathetic but not overly dramatic about it. He didn't try to rescue me or fix me. He just accepted that I had been through something difficult and was stronger because of it. "It sounds like you learned a lot about yourself," he said. "That's never easy, but it's valuable." Robert had been through his own challenges, a previous marriage that ended amicably when he and his ex-wife realized they wanted different things from life. He had no children, which he sometimes regretted, but he'd built a fulfilling life around his work and his close friendships. We dated for 6 months before I introduced him to my chosen family. The dinner where he met Jessica, Lisa, Maria, and Jennifer was one of the most nerve-wracking nights of my life, but also one of the most important. These women had become my trusted advisors, and their opinion mattered to me. Robert was nervous too, which I found endearing. He brought flowers for each of them and asked thoughtful questions about their work and interests. By the end of the evening, Jessica pulled me aside. "I like him," she said simply. "He sees you, really sees you, and he's not intimidated by how successful you are." That was exactly what I had noticed about Robert. He was proud of my business success, supportive of my ambitions, and never made me feel like I needed to diminish myself to make him comfortable. We moved in together after a year of dating, and it was the first time I had ever lived with someone who truly felt like a partner. We supported each other's careers, shared household responsibilities, and built a life together based on mutual respect and genuine affection. 2 years into our relationship, Robert proposed. Not with a flashy public display or an expensive ring, but with a quiet conversation about building a future together and a simple, elegant ring he had chosen because it reminded him of my personality: classic, beautiful, and strong. I said yes immediately. Our wedding was everything my first wedding hadn't been: small, intimate, focused on the people who actually mattered to us. Jessica was my maid of honor, and my chosen family surrounded us as we promised to support each other's dreams and weather whatever challenges came our way. My biological family was not invited. My parents had called several times over the years, trying to rebuild our relationship, but I wasn't interested in reopening that door. They had shown me who they were when it mattered most, and I had no desire to pretend otherwise. Emma had also tried to reconnect, especially after she heard through mutual acquaintances that I was successful and happy. She sent me a long email about how she had grown and changed and wanted to heal our relationship. I deleted it without responding. Some people might think I was being too harsh, too unforgiving. But I had learned that forgiveness doesn't mean allowing toxic people back into your life. I could forgive Emma for being young and stupid and jealous, but that didn't mean I had to give her another opportunity to hurt me. My chosen family understood this completely. They had all had to set boundaries with toxic family members or friends, and they supported my decision to prioritize my own well-being. 3 years after Robert and I married, we were at Jennifer's birthday party when I got an unexpected call. I almost didn't answer. It was a number I didn't recognize, but something made me pick up. "Sarah, it's Emma." I stepped outside to take the call, my stomach immediately tense. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me," she continued quickly, "but I wanted you to know that Dad had a heart attack. He's in the hospital." For a moment, I felt the old pull of family obligation, the responsible daughter who always took care of everyone. Then I remembered who I was now. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said sincerely. "I hope he recovers." Will you come to the hospital? Emma asked. Mom's really struggling and she keeps asking for you. No, I said calmly, I won't be coming. But he's your father, Emma said, and I could hear her starting to cry. Yes, he is. And when I needed my family's support, when my sister was destroying my marriage and I needed my parents to see what was happening, where were they? I asked. They chose to support you then. They can continue to support you now. Sarah, please, Emma begged. I know I made mistakes, but this isn't about me. This is about family. You're right, I agreed. This is about family, and you showed me years ago that we're not really family. We're just people who happen to be related. I hung up and went back inside to Robert and my friends. Everything okay? Robert asked, putting his arm around me. Everything's perfect, I said, and I meant it. My father recovered from his heart attack, which I learned through a mutual family friend. I was glad he was okay, but I felt no guilt about not being there. I had learned the difference between family and chosen family, and I knew where my loyalty belonged. Looking back now, I can honestly say that Emma seducing my husband was the best thing that ever happened to me. If she hadn't shown me David's true character, I might have stayed married to a criminal. If she hadn't betrayed me so completely, I might never have learned to set boundaries with my toxic family. If she hadn't forced me to rebuild my life from scratch, I might never have discovered my own strength or found my chosen family or met Robert. Emma thought she was taking everything from me, but she actually gave me everything I never knew I wanted. She's probably still out there somewhere, still charming people into taking care of her, still creating drama and leaving destruction in her wake. But that's not my problem anymore. David served his time and was released from prison last year, from what I heard. He's working some low-level job, living in a small apartment, trying to rebuild a life with nothing. The man who once thought he was too good for his boring wife is now struggling to survive. Meanwhile, I'm living a life I never could have imagined when I was married to him. My business has grown beyond my wildest dreams. I have clients across the country, a team of talented employees, and more opportunities than I can pursue. I wake up every day excited about my work instead of dreading it. Robert and I have been talking about starting a family. At 39, I'm older than I planned to be when having my first child, but I'm also more stable, more confident, and more prepared than I ever was in my 20s or early 30s. Most importantly, I'm surrounded by people who love and support me unconditionally. My chosen family celebrates my successes, supports me through challenges, and shows me every day what real love looks like. The lesson I learned from all of this is that sometimes the worst betrayal leads to the best life. If you're dealing with family betrayal, a cheating spouse, or people who don't value you, remember that their actions say everything about them and nothing about your worth. You deserve people in your life who celebrate you, not compete with you. You deserve loyalty, not manipulation. And sometimes the people who hurt you the most are actually doing you the biggest favor by showing you who they really are. Don't be afraid to walk away from toxic people, even if they share your DNA. Don't be afraid to start over, even if it's scary. And don't ever let anyone convince you that you should settle for less than you deserve just to keep the peace. Your real family, your chosen family, is out there waiting for you. The people who will love you for exactly who you are, who will support your dreams instead of trying to steal them, who will have your back when everyone else turns on you. Emma thought she won when she stole David, but looking at my life now, my successful business, my loving husband, my incredible friends, my peace of mind, I'm the one who actually won. I won the moment I stopped letting toxic people define my worth. So here's my challenge to you. If this story resonates with you, if you've been dealing with people who take advantage of your kindness or betray your trust, make today the day you start putting yourself first. Set those boundaries. Walk away from those toxic relationships. Invest in people who invest in you. And remember, the best revenge isn't getting even. It's living so well that their betrayal becomes the best thing that ever happened to you. Drop a comment below if you've ever had to cut toxic family members out of your life, or if this story gave you the courage to finally stand up for yourself. Hit that like button if you believe in chosen family over biological family. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about overcoming betrayal and finding your strength. Share this video with anyone who needs to hear that they deserve better. Because sometimes we all need a reminder that we're worth more than the people who hurt us want us to believe. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your worth isn't determined by how others treat you. It's determined by how you choose to treat yourself.